from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And for you today, an extended discussion of the 2019 Kansas Net Farm Income Summary just out from the Kansas Farm Management Association at K-State. We'll have a look at the average net income statewide, as well as the region-by-region averages, the percentage of those income numbers attributable to government payments, and comments on the general economic state of farmers and ranchers around Kansas. Joining the KFMA's Kevin Herbel and Mark Dikeman, 6 area KFMA economists. Also today, this week's horticulture segment, K-State's Raymond Cloyd will talk about several prevalent landscape insect pests currently and what to do about them. All that right here on Agriculture Today.
For information on threatening weather, you should depend on the National Weather Service and their broadcast on NOAA Weather Radio. NOAA Weather Radio is an all-hazards radio network that provides up-to-the-minute weather information, including life-saving warnings anytime, day or night. NOAA Weather Radio also broadcasts information on man-made disasters, such as chemical spills, Amber Alerts, or other national emergencies. For the National Weather Service, I'm Bill Curtis.
You're tuned in to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Glad to have you aboard once more. Well, year in and year out, it's highly regarded as a portrayal of the state of the Kansas farm economy. It's out of the Kansas Farm Management Association, based at Kansas State University, the annual net farm income summary for the state, and broken down by the 6 associations regionally that make up the Kansas Farm Management Association. It's always our pleasure to visit not only with the executive director of the KFMA, Kevin Herbel, the associate director, Mark Dikeman, and a team of 6 economists serving those associations all around Kansas, as they'll offer perspectives on this newly released report. Kevin, as traditional, we bring you in first to help us set the table on this report and what it signifies. So would you condense that down for us briefly here?
Sure, Eric. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to be gathered together with you here and be looking at these numbers. And we are here with this summary looking back at 2019, which can be hard to think about in the midst of all the COVID-19 and PPP loans and all these various things that we've had in recent weeks and months. But as we do look back at 2019, many various things around the state having impact all the way from record yields in some places to record number of acres of prevented plant in others. But all of that end result in a 9% increase in the net income of KFMA farms in 2019 compared to 2018, coming in at $110,380.
That is the average net farm income across the entire breadth of the state, correct?
That is correct. So, and within that, then, we have the 6 associations, 2 of those associations having decreases in 2019 and 4 having increases. The 2 with decreases in southeast and south central Kansas. Southeast Kansas going down about 35,000 to just over 111,000. South Central down about 30,000 to a little over 70,000. The 4 associations with increases in Southwest Kansas, a increase to 188,000. Northwest at just over 127,000. And then in North Central and Northeast, both of those incomes very similar to one another, just under 110,000 at 109,961 in North Central and 109,768 in Northeast.
Now, as our format goes here, we will go around the table virtually and talk with the area economists about what's driving those trends in their areas. But want to bring in your colleague Mark Dikeman, the associate director, for a moment here. One of the standout features of this report, and it's indicated very clearly, Mark, is the influence of government payments on that net farm income, and you've broken this down even further from that. That is such a significant component of this. Would you speak to that for a moment?
Yeah, Eric, as you mentioned, government payments are a driver in profitability KFMA farms this year. Of the $110,000 of net farm income that Kevin mentioned, Overall government payments accounted for about $80,000 of that. The majority of those government payments was Market Facilitation Program payments, or MFP. That was just over $60,000. So from a state perspective, Market Facilitation Program payments made up about almost 55% of net farm income, which by itself is a pretty significant component of that. It just kind of indicates that the importance of a strong safety net for farms to make sure that they continue producing, feeding the world essentially. The need for continued investment in those sorts of programs.
And this is carrying on a trend that actually was evident in 2018, Kevin. The percentage of net farm income made up of government payments, it was at 56%. When we look at 2019, as Mark says, it's up to 72%. So once more, in the absence of government payment support, the economic picture in Kansas agriculture looks markedly different.
Certainly, Eric. It was very influential. In 2018, without government payments, we'd have been just over $44,000 of net farm income. And in 2019, the income would have been just over $30,000 if those government payments had not been a part of that income. So very substantial, and certainly the impact of those payments that came by way of the Market Facilitation Program, the MFP payments, the larger share of that seeking to offset the effects of the trade activity and such that was taking place.
Once again, let's go to each of the area economists and get their take on how net farm income numbers read to them in their locations for 2019. And let's start with Jordan Steele from Northwest Kansas. He's based in Colby. Jordan, as Kevin noted, you saw a hike in net farm income from $116,000 in 2018 up to just over $127,000 in 2019. Government payments aside, what was the driving influence there?
Hey, Eric, thanks for having us. I think the driving force for us last year was our fall crop yields again. Actually, our dry land crop enterprises all had a positive economic return to management, all about $20 to $30 per acre, wheat, corn, milo, and soybeans. Once again, back to the MFP, that did have most of the economic profit in it, but we still would have been really close on break even on that. Definitely not irrigation last year. Our irrigated corn took a huge hit all the way down to about 170 bushels to the acre, where we usually expect 200 plus. We had several hailstorms early that caused replanting, and then we had some August windstorms that caused some lodging. And then the big one was in October. We had a windstorm that knocked at least 50 bushels on the ground for many producers. We are hearing reports of 200 bushel circles going down to 100 or 120 bushel yields. So definitely dry land for us last year.
Livestock enterprises, how were they faring in your area?
The livestock enterprises didn't do too bad considering the year. Remember last year, a year from now, we had lots of snow and lots of moisture. We had lots of people applying for FSA livestock indemnity payments based on blizzard death loss. So if you were to ask anyone, the livestock didn't do well at all. But when we looked at the numbers, they weren't too bad. They were definitely, our cow calves only made $16 a head over variable costs. So they probably worked for free, but they did cover their cash costs.
So, and we're squeezing this down fairly tightly here, but Jordan, as you consider the state of your producers coming out of 2019, if we set COVID aside for the moment, how would you describe that condition? Is equity in good shape? Are they solid or at least steady in their financial status?
I would say steady as far as financial status. We've still got plenty of equity in the region. The biggest thing for us actually is still cash flow. In Northwest in 2015 and 16, our net farm income was basically zero. You tack $100,000 family living on that. We had average farms losing $200,000 over those years. Now we've had 3 very consistent years in 17, 18, and 19, all 100,000 plus net farm income. And so cash flow is getting better, but we still haven't replaced those big gaps from the 15 and 16 year.
All right, Jordan, appreciate that. Jordan Steele the KFMA Northwest Executive Economist. Let's hear how things were in southwest Kansas and bring in Logan Hedlund, economist there. Logan's based in Dodge City. So the southwest numbers, quite impressive as well from 2018 to 2019 in the improvement. Logan, as we see an overall net farm income average of $188,000 and change in your region, up from $153,000 the previous year. So again, same question, what was the impetus behind that improvement?
Yeah, I'd have to echo some of the comments Jordan made, in particular on the dryland acres that we had in the Southwest Association. 2019 started off promising with a good amount of moisture through the winter. That led to some pretty impressive wheat yields on the dryland acres towards the west side of our association. So operators were really able to produce their way through some less desirable markets. Mother Nature kind of kept us on our toes through the summer. There was a June hailstorm that stretched across 4 counties, late June hailstorm. That took the fall crops, back to square one. Producers that were in a little bit more of a stronger working capital position or more liquid position, they were able to pull the trigger and market their commodities instead of necessarily feeling the need to have to do it at that time.
So, again, same question to you as well about the general status of your producers in your area as 2019 rounded out. Fairly sound footing as far as their economics?
I would say it's sound, but people are definitely keeping an eye on it. COVID-19 pandemic aside, the drought monitor is not looking pretty for our area. Right. We're getting reports from our producers, again, on the western side where the drought monitor's starting to look a little worse, that they're zeroed out or abandoned wheat acres to fall crops if it works into their rotations.
Well, Logan Hedlund there. Thanks, Logan, for that quick look. And we do need to break away for a few moments. When we return, we'll hear about how the numbers played out for North Central, South Central, Northeast, and Southeast Kansas, as well as some summary comments on the net farm income numbers just out for 2019 from the Kansas Farm Management Association. You're listening to Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Agriculture Today is back now on the K-State Radio Network. Once again, we're reviewing on today's broadcast the numbers that have just been posted by the Kansas Farm Management Association, the executive summary on Kansas net farm income in 2019. Once more, this report each year is considered an important barometer on the economic health of the Kansas farm economy. We are going association by association around the state, getting comments from the economists in those associations about how the economic fortunes have rolled in 2019 for their producers. And next up in our rotation here, KFMA economist for North Central Kansas, Will Feldkamp. Will is based out of Beloit. So, Will, taking a look at the raw numbers here, the net farm income in 2019 for your region, almost $110,000. That's up, well, quite a bit from the previous year. So again, what was behind that improvement?
Yeah, so we showed an increase of $33,000 from the 2018 net farm income. Our government payments went up $23,000, so almost all of that was the result of a higher government payment. We had a phenomenal wheat yields, 55 bushel average compared to a 2018 average of 45. We had some producers with 80, 90 bushel averages in some fields, so we had tremendous wheat yields. Everything else was pretty much up. The corn and milo both did significantly better as a result of them, I think, getting higher government payments. Soybean yields were about the same, and our prices tended to be about the same. But it was a tough year for double crop soybeans, which we have a fair amount of acreage there. That actually showed a negative $35 return to management. The corn, like I say, was better. Yields were better pretty much all across the board except for soybeans.
And on the livestock side of the equation, once more, that region features quite a bit of cow-calf activity and some backgrounding as well. So how would you gauge that?
The livestock, like Jordan said, was not good in our area. We had significant death loss from the hard winter. Just some of the numbers, we actually showed a $61 deficit as far as covering variable costs on our beef cow-calf and a $72 deficit on our beef feeders. And those numbers were down between $120 and $139 from the year before. So it was a pretty tough year for us on the livestock side of things. The price was actually only a couple cents difference that our producers received. So it was mostly a result of lower weights produced and the death loss.
So when you look at that disparity in the enterprises, crops to livestock, specifically cattle, how are your producers overall faring, would you say, at this point, or at least exiting 2019?
Exiting 2019, I think we were in a much stronger position than most people would have thought in the spring of 2019, based on the weather we were having and the planting trouble that people were having. Like I say, the wheat turned out really great, and our fall crop yields were good. Our debt-to-asset ratios did increase from 25% or up to 25%, which was up 1.5%. Our current ratio was 1.8, and that was about the same as the start of the year. So overall, our working capital position is still fairly decent, but obviously this year we've got a whole new set of challenges, and the prices are very, very depressed right now.
Will, thanks for that. Will Feldkamp from the North Central Association of the Kansas Farm Management Association. And we're around to South Central Kansas. Bryan Manny with us. Bryan is a longtime economist in that part of the state. And Bryan, your numbers last year, as far as the net farm income average, $70,566. As Kevin Herbel noted earlier, yours was one of the two regions in the state which actually dropped in net farm income from 2018, and it was almost a $30,000 drop. So, hate to ask, but what happened?
I think, Eric, to get the true picture of 2019, we need to go back and look at the fall of 2018. We've always said in South Central Kansas, wheat is the king. What wheat does will drive our economic activity in South Central. October 2018, we had extremely excess moisture, probably one of the wettest Octobers in history. And so a lot of the wheat, if it got planted, was not in ideal conditions at all. So that made it a hard battle going into 2019. And then the excess moisture continued in the spring of 19, where we had prevented planting besides the wheat the fall before, but also some of the spring planted crops, corn, and especially cotton, which is becoming a productive crop for South Central Kansas. A lot of the cotton, if it got planted, was destroyed. A lot of it just didn't get planted. So that kind of tells a little bit of the history for 2019.
Want to note here, because it's become an important theme in discussing the numbers, and that is, as we spoke to earlier, the percent of government payments that make up net farm income. And this is broken down region by region in the report. Actually, your percentage in South Central Kansas last year exceeded 100%, which says volumes, doesn't it?
It does, Eric. I think if we go back to those type of numbers where it's over 100% of net farm income, you probably have to go back to 1984, 85, 86, what we consider the farm crisis, when the government payments were over 100% of net farm income. So last year, our net farm income was $70,000. Our government payments, total government payments, were over about $78,000, so about 110% of our net farm income was from government payments, and the MFP payment was about 80% of our net farm income.
What does this say about the economic solvency of your production sector down there right now, Bryan?
Well, we had some good years, those 5 good years before we bumped into these rough years, and a lot of the farms, I think, took more of an approach to let's not get too wild on the good years, try to pay off debt, try to get some resources back in the cookie jar. And so from an equity standpoint, really our farms are I think, solid from a financial standpoint. But again, we're relying on fairly stable land values and machinery values. Again, like the other associations, cash flow, I think, is our major focus, especially as we go into wheat harvest down here in south central Kansas, not knowing just exactly how the wheat's going to yield. It's just not quite known at this point. Probably won't know, of course, till middle of June, harvest time. But if we can get an average or above average wheat yield, I think we can fairly stay on stable grounds.
All right. Thanks, Bryan. Bryan Manny from the South Central Association. Well, let's move then now to northeast Kansas and bring in Chelsea Plummer, who is out of Council Grove for the association in that region of the state. And Chelsea, your number is a bit brighter than what we just described with Bryan's area. The net farm income in 2019 was at $109,000, and that was well over $40,000 better than the previous year, 2018. So how would you sum up the factors behind that improvement?
Yeah, we did have a little bit of an increase in government payments and specifically that MFP, but it was still only a portion of our overall increase. A lot of it this year, when we looked, was mostly probably due to yields, which is kind of the story we've heard in other areas as well. Our costs stayed pretty steady from 18 to 19, but when we looked at gross income per acre, it was up close to $90. And a lot of that came from increased yields, as prices didn't really increase much either. Primarily corn, it looked like corn was up about 30 bushels per acre on average, and soybeans was up about 9 bushels per acre.
How about your livestock side? Part of your area represents part of the Flint Hills. What did that say as far as the numbers go?
Livestock would probably be similar to what some of the other guys have mentioned. It didn't look great for last year. Cow-calf operations struggled to cover variable costs and everything last year. So maybe not much worse than the years before, but it definitely hasn't really improved a whole lot either.
So again, the basic question, the standing economically of your producers coming out of 2019, and a good cropping year, as you note, are those important variables such as equity, debt to assets, and so forth in good stead right now?
They really are still standing pretty well. From 18 to 19, there really wasn't much deterioration of balance sheets or anything, which is really good to see. Liquidity decreased just a little bit, but not a very significant amount. I think as far as going from 19 to 20, people were in not much worse standing going into 2020. I think right now people are a little worried with all the uncertainties and everything. So unfortunately, just a waiting game to see how things turn out.
Indeed. Chelsea, thanks. Chelsea Plummer, Council Grove, Kansas Farm Management Association economist for Northeast Kansas. And we have one more area to cover, that being the Southeast. We'll pick up on that, as well as get some closing comments from Kevin Herbel. As once more on Agriculture Today, we're going over the findings in the just-released report on Kansas Net Farm Income 2019 out of the Kansas Farm Management Association here at Kansas State University. We'll return after this break over the K-State Radio Network.
Did you know every Kansas farmer feeds 128-plus people?
Kansas farmers are hard workers, dependable, authentic, and sensitive.
Not only do farmers put food on your table, but they put clothes on your back and fuel in your car.
For more information about Kansas farmers, visit K-State Research and Extension online or stop by your local Extension office. This message has been brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, as we will finish up our conversation with the Kansas Farm Management Association economists from around the state, as well as the association administrators, Kevin Herbel and Mark Dikeman. We're discussing the just-posted report on Kansas Net Farm Income 2019 from the association. So far, we have gone through 5 of the 6 area associations that make up the KFMA. Lastly here, it's to southeast Kansas, where Dillon Rapp serves as a KFMA economist in that region. Dillon operates out of Chanute. And Dillon, unfortunately, your area was one of the 2 that Kevin mentioned that did see a fall-off in net farm income in 2019. At $111,000, that was down from $136,000, a very good year in 2018. So, again, was this about excessive moisture, perhaps?
You bet. Absolutely. Yeah, we're used to getting our share of rain down here in southeast Kansas, but it was definitely more than we're used to in 2019. Our station there in Parsons, we usually get upper 30s would be an average rainfall year, and we were around 57 or 58 inches in 19, I think. So just a tremendous amount of moisture, and that created challenges from planting wheat in the fall of 18, all the way through having trouble getting our corn planted, and then soybeans got planted late. Our double crop beans were especially late, and double crop bean yields were way down from what we've seen the last 3 or 4 years. So that kind of all combined to create a pretty bad situation on the revenue side anyway.
And as reflected in the percentage of net farm income in your area attributable to government payments was very close to 67%. So if those weren't in place, then this scenario could be a lot worse, it would seem, Dillon.
Absolutely. I think if you look at our crop enterprise breakdown, full season soybeans would be our only enterprise that showed a positive return to management. That includes all the kind of fixed non-cash costs like depreciation and operator labor that we like to talk about as economists. But without those government payments, even our full season soybeans wouldn't have showed a positive return to management. So they really made a big difference on our bottom lines.
So did the livestock enterprises lend any further encouragement to the economic situation down there this past year?
I don't think they necessarily helped boost our net incomes any, but they also didn't contribute to the deterioration we saw from 18 to 19 either. I think they were pretty steady with where they were the year before. Our backgrounders and finishers were very consistent. They did have a positive return to their variable costs and just a small negative return to management. And our cow-calf producers continue to struggle. They had a loss even below what their variable cost to produce were. So that it wasn't a good year for the cow-calf producers by any means.
So when your area turned the corner from 2019 to 2020, what was your sense of the state of things down there? Are folks getting in any kind of economic peril or getting close to it?
I think we were in such good financial positions coming out of our good years in 2013 and 2014 that it's really taken a long time to erode those financial positions. Going from 18 to 19, the last 2 years of data we have to look at, we did see our debt-to-asset ratios trend upward, and we saw our current rate trend downward, and that's kind of a trend we've seen continue since 2014. So our overall equity positions, I think, is still good, but the trend is still kind of concerning. We'd like to see that turn the corner at some point.
Dillon, thanks for the input right there. Dillon Rapp out of Chanute, economist for Southeast Kansas Farm Management Association. So we bring it back to you, Kevin Herbel, and you've heard perspectives from all around the state and your area economists. And now we're in 2020, and we have the enormous wild card that is COVID-19. As you pull all of this together, last year's numbers, and just anecdotally where we are today, economic conditions in Kansas agriculture, how would you portray those?
Maybe you would say uncertain. Would that be a good way to describe it?
Yeah.
I think. But a lot of cautious optimism in some ways in the midst of that as opportunity to consider the fact that we have had moisture in a number of places. One of the things that was very consistent going around the discussion here was the impact of bushels, even in the instance of our lower price scenarios, the impact of that production and the benefit that had toward assisting in improved incomes in the areas where they were. The thing is, we consider each of these factors and a lot of things before all of our farm producers in management decisions that they make that are out of their control. And I think within that, a need to be seeking to put themselves in a position to respond as good as they can to these things that are out of their control, and yet exhibit as much control as they can over the things that are within their control. And certainly an important part of what we would all encourage people to do is to take steps to improve their record keeping, take steps to improve the way in which they use their own financial numbers to manage in an improved way. I think those who know and understand where they are at are going to be better able to make adjustments, make the decisions necessary, even respond in a more timely way. And certainly the idea of tight cash flow, of working capital continuing to decrease and getting in these tighter overall financial positions was very consistent as well. And I think as each producer, each manager of these farms addresses and looks at their situation, gets an understanding of their own numbers and where they're at, to make decisions in a way that allows improving their working capital position, allows getting them in a place where they can be most free to be making management decisions as they would desire, rather than have these uncertain circumstances driving their decision making.
And lastly, this report is considered a resource as it's posted every year by the association. Where can folks look at that report?
This information is all posted through the Ag Econ Department website at agmanager.info, and then /KFMA to get to the KFMA numbers as they seek to know and understand their own financial position and make decisions in these current times.
It's an important document that captures the economic condition of the Kansas agricultural sector in the form of the Kansas Farm Management Association's executive summary on net farm income and the associated data that goes into that summary. It can be found currently at agmanager.info. And thanks to each and every one of you for joining us today and sharing the information in the report and what it means concerning the economic status of agriculture in your locations. Appreciate your time, all of you. From the Kansas Farm Management Association out of Kansas State University, Executive Director Kevin Herbel, the Associate Director Mark Dikeman, and the area economists, Northwest Kansas, Jordan Steele, Southwest, Logan Hedlund, North Central Kansas, Will Feldkamp, South Central Kansas, Bryan Manny, Northeast Kansas, Chelsea Plummer, and Southeast Kansas, Dillon Rapp. And you're listening to Agriculture Today.
When you are in need of timely, reliable, and trusted information, K-State Research and Extension is here. Whether it's organizing people, information, or resources, they have the necessary tools. Community comes first for K-State Research and Extension. For more information and to connect with your county's extension agents, visit www.ksre.k-state.edu.
Coming your way now on Agriculture Today, our weekly time on horticultural matters of interest. And we talk insects in the lawn and garden once again, principally this time in the landscape, with Raymond Cloyd aboard. Raymond is a horticultural entomologist with K-State Research and Extension. No lack of things to kick around here at Raymond, so we'll get right to it. Yeah. A pest that we occasionally talk about, but not with that much frequency, something called the European elm flea weevil. What's the story here?
Well, it is a pest that nobody really thinks about, but if you walk around and you see some elms with holes in them and some mines in them, that's the European elm flea weevil. And the larval stage is a miner. It creates serpentine mines in the leaf, and then the adult is a weevil. And weevils are those insects that have these snouts, and they create like shot holes in the leaves. Although they're really not going to kill a large tree, Eric, they can ruin the aesthetic appearance of it. You can spray, but when you're dealing with these large trees, it's very, very hard to get thorough coverage. So if you can live with it, maybe convince people it's a new variety of elm, whatever, I would just basically accept at this point.
Is it exclusive to elms then, this weevil, or does it attack other trees?
Primarily, most of the elms, Chinese elms and others in Siberian that we see in landscapes, Eric, yeah, it does not feed on other types of trees. It's primarily anything in the ulmus genera, which is the elm. And it will, again, run its course sometime in the relative near future then? It will, yeah. So I think if people can just live with it, that's probably going to be the best way to deal with it.
Once more, by name, the European elm flea weevil. It'll cause cosmetic damage, potentially to your elms, but once more, not meriting treatment. You're getting calls, you say, Raymond, about ants in the house, migrating in.
Yes, it's weather-related, of course, and ants are coming in. Those are, of course, the workers looking for food, and then they grab a food there, and they'll bring it back to the colony. So the best way to deal with ants in the home, Eric, is baits. Sold commercially in nurseries and garden centers. Most of these baits have a very slow-acting insecticide, so then the workers can take it back, feed the soldiers and the queen, and depending on the size of the colony, kill it. I mean, it could take many years before the entire colony, depending on the ant species, is basically, quote, eliminated.
So repeat again that treatment you're talking of there.
Well, there are a series of baits, and one of them that I like, and not promoting it, is taro ant baits. It's boric acid. You open the container, put it in the areas where the ants are congregating, and they go in and grab the bait and take it back to their colony and feed the rest of the colony. But there are other ant baits commercially available that contain like fipronil and indoxacarb that are also effective against ants.
Will we arrive then at a time in the relative near future where ants will on their own stop entering homes by and large?
Only if we're living in ice houses or something like that, Eric. As long as we're in areas, forested areas or whatever, the best way to deal with ants is to caulk the outside of the house and keep all your food in sealed storage containers. And going back to what Mother said, cleanliness is next to godliness, pick up all debris and clutter.
All right. It is shaping up to be a banner year for ticks out in the home landscape. So they seem to have arrived early in the spring, and they're certainly still around. What are you picking up in regard to their activity?
Well, let's go back a little bit now, Eric. This coronavirus situation has got people cabin fever locked up, and they want to go out. So we've had some good rains, cool weather, and there's lots of vegetation. So people are taking walks. And so the ticks, primarily the hard ticks, are out and about on unmanaged vegetation. And when people go into these areas, they run the risk of getting ticks on them. So what we recommend is that if you're going to go out into wooded areas, especially unmanaged wooded areas, is you spray your legs with a repellent, such as DEET. You tuck your pant legs into your socks, wear white socks because then you can see the ticks. And then when you come back home, have somebody check you over and take a shower, because ticks may take a little bit of time to wander around, especially the sea ticks, which are very hard to see. They're the early end stars. And that's the best way. If you do get a tick on you, the best way is take tweezers, put it right at the head, and gently pull it out. Don't twist it. Don't use a match or lighter or Vaseline. Just gently pull it out, because if the mouth parts stay in, then that can lead to a infection, and then you're probably going to have to go to a doctor. Right. We have most of the ticks, black-legged tick, deer tick that vector Lyme disease. We have the Rocky Mountain spotted fever tick, Lone Star tick. Ticks are vectors of diseases, and I think just like mosquitoes, you need to take them very seriously.
If one is so inclined, if one is worried about having a disease transmitted to them by a tick, if they can save that tick, it can be turned in for analysis, can it not?
It can. As you know, we've talked about, we are not accepting mail. However, I've had people mail it to my home. That way I can bring it in, and then I can identify it for you to figure out which tick it is. And then you can go to the doctor, and they will know what antidote or how to treat you. Or
they could snap a photo of that tick, perhaps, and send it that way to you. If
they take a quality image, that's really going to be good. Yeah.
All right. Last thing here, and it's inevitable that you're receiving questions now as we're into or approaching the middle part of May on treating those landscape evergreens for bagworms. We're close, but not quite to that juncture yet, you say, Raymond?
No. If you spray now, it's going to be a really complete waste. I would say end of May, beginning of June. That's when you want to be out there with either your BTK BTK and spinosad, which are the ones I really like to use early on, because if you time it right, you can really substantially kill a large number of bagworms. But as of right now, this is not the time to start.
When we have you back, we will likely be in the midst of that bagworm treating period, the recommended time anyway, so we'll dwell on control measures at that time. Raymond, it's always a pleasure. Thanks. We'll welcome you back in soon.
Always a pleasure, Eric. Look forward to our next visit.
The latest update on insect activity in home landscapes, that is Raymond Cloyd, horticultural entomologist with K-State Research and Extension, on this week's Horticulture segment. And that's our time for today. Be sure to check out our podcast service at agtoday.net. That again is agtoday.net. Meantime, please be back here with us tomorrow. Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.